Hello and welcome to Dubai Trains. In this video, I'm going to plan the traffic for my layout, the CD&TRRA. We're going to answer questions like how many trains do I need to run? How many jobs are there just to start off with? How many cars are on the layout? How many spots are there? How big does my yard need to be? In what order are the trains going to run? We're going to answer all these questions and I'm going to explain how so you can do it for your own layout. So let's start. So guys, here's the schematic of my railroad. It should be familiar to most of my regular watchers, and I already explained in the various videos, part 1, part 2, and part 3, how I came to the exact design. And in those videos, we look at the details. Where does the track plan come from? Where does it sit in the landscape? And how does it connect to the other railroads? And how we're going to operate it. Let's just get started. But first, we need to start counting and putting some numbers in perspective. Here's a chart of the layout. We're going to count the number of spots. So let me just take an easy example. The near north section with all the industries has 27 specific industry spots. And then it also has an additional 14 parking spots. More on that later. So then I counted all the spots. Also, I put the staging in here. We have 20 spots, of which 10 will be for in and out traffic, and 10 cars will be held for the next round. The other interchange, the Division Street Yard, has some industries here as well. I have 12 spots. And if I count them all up, I have 141 spots. That's including the parking. So now, once you got this, you need to ask yourself, how many spots will be filled at any given time? So if we take an example, the near north, so of the 27 plus 14, 41 spots, the 25 are full. So it's almost about half. Then we have the Pensy interchange, so we have 15 spots there. I did not count 15 plus 15 is 30 because these are just parking spots temporarily that need to stay clear to load and offload the ferry. So counting up all the spots filled at any time, there are 71, and that's exactly half of the 141 spots that we have in total. Now you need to ask yourself, how many spots, how many cars are going to be switched in a day? So if we look at the near north again, 25 spots will be full at any given time, but we're only going to switch out 18. This is also still quite a lot, but doesn't matter, we're only going to switch out 18. Now if you look at the brewery, we have 8 spots that are full, and we're going to switch out 8. Again, and this is very unusual to have the same number, but this is because there's a lot of reefers in the brewery. So these cars are not going to be loaded for a day. No, they're going to come in the morning and go out in the afternoon. We're going to have a relatively high turnover of cars right here. And then the other spots are going to be for the fueling that's there, and the hops, offloading, and grains, and all that. Now, a more typical ratio is what you see here at the Division Street Yard. So we have 12 industry spots, and then we have 10 that are filled at any given time, which is quite a lot, but only 5 will be switched in a day. So that basically means that half of them will get switched out during a day. Now we got 10 and 10 for the C&W and 15-15 for the Pensy, because that means that we are going to totally flip all these staging spots. So we got 15 spots right here. We're going to take 15 out and we're going to put 15 back. And the C&W is the same. We're going to take 10 out and we're going to put 10 back. So one of the reasons why we do this exercise is to determine the maximum yard size. This is one way to do it. You'll see another way in a second. So what does this mean? We'll just quickly calculate it. The maximum yard size is the maximum amount of spots times 3, because you want to have an overcapacity of your yard. That's 52, it's right here on the right. Times 3 is 156. But then you got to divide it by the maximum spots filled at any given time, because this is going to be the amount of cars that are actually on the layout. So divided by half, and then also divided by the spots that are going to be switched in a day. So these are the cars that are actually going to flow through the yard in that day. So that's 0.4. So 156 times 0.5 times 0.4 is 31. Now you see in a minute that this is a nice theoretical number. So to wrap your head around this and the traffic flow, let me just make these 2 little diagrams. So this here on the left, you see all the cars that are coming in or onto our little railroad in a day. So we got 10 from the C&W, 2 from this one, 15 from the Pensy, and these cars all go through this Division Street Yard here in the middle, 27 that come in, and then they all go out again. 5 to the other industries, 18 to near north, and 8 to the brewery. And this should all be a balance, so 27 to 31 is close enough balanced for this purpose of the video. But at the same day, these industries that you see on the right, these other industries near North and Brewery, we're going to give cars back to the yard 8, 18, and 5, so 31 again. And these cars don't live at the yard, no, they're all going back up the line to the Pensy interchange and to the other interchanges. So what we actually need to do is merge these two graphs, add them up, and then you have a whopping 60 cars coming into the yard from both the interchanges and the industries, and have a whopping 60 cars going out of the yard to both the interchanges and the industries. So yes, in plus out, there's 120 cars going through this yard in one session. So that is a lot. So now we know how many cars need to travel to the various parts of the layout, and we know the maximum train length, which in my case is 8 cars. We can start chopping them up, and now we know how many jobs we're actually going to need. There's one job called the NN local. This is a near north local, so that is going to switch out. There's 3 of these in a day, and switch out 36 cars. And then there's one job is the brewery, and there's only one, and it's going to switch out 16 cars. So how does that work? 16 cars, 1 train, 18 cars maximum train length. Well, it's going to take 8 cars from the brewery to the yard, and then on the way back, it's going to take 8 cars from the yard to the brewery. So 8 plus 8 is 16. So we do this for the entire layout. Let's just do a little intermediate diagram to show what these jobs do exactly. So we have the hostler north. So this originates from the Division Street yard and takes cars to the staging and or takes cars back from the staging to the yard. So we have another hostler that originates from the Division Street yard and goes all the way past near north, past the brewery to the car ferry, and or collects or drops off cars there. Then we have the near north jobs. This is going to be several, 3 or 4. They all originate and terminate here in the Division Street yard, and they go to the near north section as the name suggests. And because the CM St. Paul and P interchange is also connected to the near north, it's going to be dealt with by the NN local. And then we have one more that's for the brewery, and the brewery actually originates and terminates at the brewery itself. That's where a small diesel will be housed. And why there? Because we have to do some intermediate switching at the brewery itself and get the cars from the brewery to the icing. So once a day, that job will run all the way from the brewery to the Division Street yard, drop off the cars there, sort out the cars it needs, pick it up, and go all the way back to the brewery. So we already at this point answered a lot of questions. Which jobs are there? Which trains are there? How big does my yard have to be? So now we need to figure out how we're going to actually run this, because it's not as easy as just starting and then going through these jobs. No, we got to actually think about it. So I'm going to do this in a string diagram. And I know this is maybe not the most appropriate tool to do this, but this is a very insightful way to do it, and you'll see that in a minute. So what we have is the different points along the line from north to south in the correct order. And then here on the horizontal axis, we have the time. So this is a destination versus a time graph. We start at 5 in the morning and we end at midnight, potentially. Now there's several locations on the line where trains can meet and cross each other on the siding, and these are shown in red. So let's just draw in the first train, and the most easiest schedule I could come up with is that you collect all the cars from the interchange, then you switch everything, and then you drop off all the other cars back at the interchange. The first train leaves at the Division Street yard. It's empty, it's a dot line. It goes to the Pensy interchange, picks up cars, and then goes back to the Division Street yard. It does this again because it cannot haul all the cars from the car float in one run, so it has to do it twice. And then the same happens to the CNN and W interchange. So we leave Division Street yard, go there, pick up the cars, and then drop them all back. Now we have all the cars, so we do some switching. That's this black line. When it's horizontal, it's switching. And the same for the near north. As you see, I clustered these 3 lines together because basically 3 sidings where trains can meet. They're going to be switching here in this entire section, and where they are exactly in the near north, you just have to see it when you have to meet with another train. So if you want to go through near north, you got to watch out and check with the yard master where they are. So a train comes in, one here, they take 8 cars with them, and then they go back, one here, one here. And then at the end of the day, let me fill in a little bit, you get the same but in reverse order. Now you can imagine if you first collect all the cars and bring them into the yard, and then you have all the cars in the yard and you distribute them, you're going to get a massive pileup of cars. So I was thinking of a way like, how can I show this and count this? So what I'm going to do now is take this red line here at the Division Street yard and widen it up a bit and add the numbers of the cars. So at the beginning of the day, we didn't collect any cars yet, so the yard is empty, so we're going to have 0 cars. Then this blue one comes back, brings 8 cars, so plus 8. 0 plus 8 is 8. Then the yellow one comes back, brings 10 cars, so 8 plus 10 is 18. So let's get another example. After some switching here, the near north local leaves to near north, and it takes with them 8 cars, so it's minus 8. So then 25 cars in the yard, minus 8 is 17. So you get how this works. And you see there's 2 pileup of cars. One here, we have up to 25 cars in the yard, which is a lot. And here on the right, it gets even worse because you have 33 cars in the yard. So that's not really ideal. So I call this variant all in, all out, because all the cars come in at the same time and all cars go out at the same time. So for everyone who is still with me, maybe we should pause it and get a beer or a cup of coffee. I was thinking, how can we alleviate the traffic here? So from the all in, all out, went to all in, get out, as in get all the traffic out. And at this point in time, I also started thinking about the car float, how would that work? So the float would actually arrive here in the morning, the cars would be taken off, and then the float would leave empty. And in the afternoon, an empty float would arrive, and then the cars would be spotted on the float, and then the full float would leave again. So if we fill this in a little bit, you see that actually by bringing these car float runs a bit earlier, I alleviate the, let's call it afternoon traffic. In the morning, it's still a bit of a buzz. This is not ideal. So then I was thinking about the float a bit more, and typically I think they would be flipped as soon as quick as they can. So then I came up with another variant where the car float would arrive and depart at the last half of the day. And then, yeah, you would get something like this. So the cars would come off the float and then wait overnight. And then in the morning, first thing, the near north local would leave to switch near north. This is somewhat prototypical because near north, I think, Kingsbury was always switched in the early hours of the morning because there wasn't that much traffic on the streets. And the brewery at some point can arrive because it needs the cars filled with beer to go onto the float again that you see here, so it has to arrive before that. There's some thinking behind this. It's not very logical, and if you look at the total traffic load, you see here the numbers in the middle again, you have basically cars sitting in the yard almost all day long because they're just waiting on each other. This is totally inefficient. The cars come here in the evening and then they're waiting till the morning. And then the cars that come back here from the near north section, they're going to be waiting till they can go to the float in the afternoon again, and it just didn't work at all. And at the same point, I was thinking of yet another constraint for my layout, because if you remember my last video, there's a lot of off-spot unloading, inspection, and cleaning happening in these city areas. And also for my layout, all these blue spots, if you remember, those are the parking spots where we can have cars spotted for inspection, cleaning, and off-spot unloading. So we need to deal with this inspection, cleaning, off-spot loading. We need to deal with that. We need to plan it in. So I was thinking we'll plan it in like this. We'll have a near north switching session in the morning. Everything that needs to be cleaned and inspected or set for icing will happen in that session. And then later, after a coffee break, the cars will be cleaned, inspected, and released from the icing. And these cars will then be switched out and brought back to the yard. And I was also thinking about the float. It needs to be turned quickly. How this would happen prototypically is that the engine and all the cars that have to go onto the float will be waiting for the full float to arrive. Float arrives, all the cars will be taken off the float, and then immediately all the other cars that are waiting will be spotted onto it, and then the float can leave and be flipped as soon as possible. Is that we're actually going to have 2 runs. You see here the blue line running full to the float or to the track next to it, running empty back, and then another one here full, and then a float arrives, all the cars are taken off and all the cars are spotted, and then there's going to be another run back from the float to the yard, bringing half of the load, and then empty run back, and then a full run back from the float to the yard again. And then additionally, the ice would be switched somewhere during the day. So this could somehow work, and if you look at it, this is a version of float flip and inspect, because we're flipping the float and we're inspecting the cars. And if you look at the traffic flow, it's totally not balanced. There's a massive, the biggest peak I had so far, 38 cars here at the end when this brewery comes in. So this doesn't work. This needs to be optimized. And actually, if you look at the top corner, I optimized this twice to come to this final design. Let's go through it. This is how my layout is going to operate, and it's quite complex. So early morning, like the prototype, 2 trains are going to leave to near north, 2 runs, and switch this out. Take the cars they can take, spot the cars they can spot, and cars that need to be cleaned and inspected, iced, are going to be set right there. Then as we get so many cars back, immediately one engine is going to take all the cars it can all the way to the float, drop them off, run back empty. As it comes back empty, it's going to take all the cars that it can to the C&W interchange and come back empty as well. So while this happens, the other engine can go back out to near north and just spot and switch the final cars that have been cleaned and inspected and icing and all that. And then when it comes back, the second half of the cars, here this big blue line, will go to the interchange and then the float arrives. All the cars will be taken off the float, put on the track alongside it, and the other cars will be spotted on the float, and then it will go back full to the yard, drop the cars off, go back to the float, pick up the cars, go back to the yard. And then we have, while all this happens in this mist, one extra run right here with a full train going to the interchange and bringing back the first and only full load from the interchange of the day, and they will arrive here in the evening and sit at the yard for the next day. And the next day will all happen again. So now let's look at the brewery. The brewery has been busy making beer at night. So in the morning, first thing that happens, the cars are loaded and the cars are switched to the icing. They sit there for a few hours because they need ice. And then once that's done, all the cars that need to go from the brewery and from the icing to the Division Street yard, the cars will be dropped off. Then we gotta wait for the cars from the float to arrive. So once these arrive right here, the brewery would pick the cars that it needs to pick and then go against traffic back with all these cars to the brewery, and that is the end of that. So as you see, this is quite a busy and full, and I find it quite a complex schedule, but it works very well. I do note this is a theoretical chart, because if some cars here from the C&NW that arrive here at night have to go to the brewery, then in theory they have to wait all day for the green line leaves as well. So these cars are going to be sitting in the yard all day. If you look at the numbers game, then you don't see that reflected in the numbers, because the numbers again are theoretical. It is theoretical that every train can take the maximum amount of cars that it can, and it comes back with the maximum amount of cars that it can. Do note how balanced and empty my yard is right now. This is what I like to see. The maximum peak load is 17, then I got 14, and it's very little. But again, this is not the reality, because there's going to be more cars sitting around because it's not as optimized as this. So after all this information, I think now it's time to sit back and relax with a layout tour. So click the video that you see on the screen right now to enjoy that. Thank you all for watching. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments down below. Bye bye.